deny them their rights as they have done to us for so long. And it was impressive to me that it is true that these forces that have been enacted, that have been used to scare the hell out of everybody for so long, could work against the same forces that produced them. Okay, and that's what impressed me so much when I began to question, this information. And all of the pieces were put into place for me to understand.
Okay, so then the next question I had was, okay, sure, and this kind of ties back to his initial interview with Camelot, in that he stated timeline 1 and timeline 2, inevitably whatever is done to create and bring about timeline 2 brings about a paradox that also forwards or allows for timeline 1 to be advanced. So inevitably there's this paradox. I'm like, okay, I can kind of, if I stay open and listen and try to discern, I can see that. But then my next thought was, well, couldn't they just arrest them anyway? Like, if this was what their plan was, couldn't they just do it? And you have to think back when Obama was first elected, perhaps, like Bill started off today saying, is that, yes, maybe, however, it might be more effective if you had somebody in place documenting, and under the impression that they were
co-opted,
so that they could execute orders and potentially document where these orders came from, how this all worked from the inner side once they were agreed co-opted,
And I think everybody could understand, if you take a minute and put yourself in the shoes of the president, you take your oath of office, you walk over to the White House your first day, and within a few months you figure out that those changes that you expected to make, that you made promised in your campaign, were continuously undermined and continuously derailed. And the industry and the capitalism and the profit making was going to continuously.
The one that stuck out, yeah, when you said it that way, the one that stuck out in my mind is that Obama had, kind of supported the automobile industry, but more specifically, there was solar technology that he got behind, and then all of a sudden it was flipped, and the IRA came in and took it down. Do you remember? There was a solar company.
Right. And
so there's all these oh, okay.
There's many things and many ways and many examples of what's happened. And
that was very confusing though. And I just observe, and I always go, well, that's interesting. Take note of that. And then maybe at some point the last thread will connect them, and you can go, okay, So then the next thing you said to me was, well, that's what Columbia was all about.
Well, Columbia was the straw that broke the camel's back. Columbia was the taking down of the members of the Secret Service and the military that were going to get in the way of this change. And that's an important piece, because if you have people in your organization that are directly working against you and are in fact there to protect you, you need a way to get those people out.
To shine a light on them.
To shine a light on them, maybe not by not saying something that the media would be quickly overriding and distracting from, but to do it in a way that, quite frankly, Americans are comfortable with.
Okay,
and sex scandal is a good way to, have the sentiment of the American public go, oh, well, had to be done.
Which is interesting and ironic. Didn't you mention something about potentially there was a threat for?
Well, yes. Once the presidency exposed their cards and the powers that be realized that he wasn't on board and he was about to take them down, I think you can I think President Kennedy would come back from the grave and testify that there's a real threat. And that threat needed to be eliminated. And the CIA and the FBI and the Secret Service and the Federal Marshal System and the military needed to be on board and needed to be under control.
Well, and then this goes back to, again, our interview with Drake on Friday, which was we had intended to kind of go into this conversation with Drake, but at that point we realized we really weren't clear on how to present it yet and how we felt. We wanted to take more time to kind of collect ourselves and really get quiet and listen to our inner guidance. And so,
and quite frankly,
we wanted to hear what his...
If Drake was given this choice to undertake this mission, he would have been bringing up this subject and he would have been contacted.
And
there's
Bill,
a reason that I was asked to do it and why I'm taking up the challenge.
And Bill felt it would have been, just so everybody out there that I know was patiently waiting and asking where this video was, understands, Bill felt at that point it wouldn't have been fair to ask Drake to take this on because Bill was the one that was contacted, and you know, if later down the road Drake wants to come back and comment, that would be something we're definitely open and willing to have happen. But at the time, Bill felt it would have been unfair to kind of like unload it on him. So, but
at the same time, I did question him about. I mean, I had this information when I was doing the interview, so I did ask the question.
We were throwing around the idea of going into it. It just.
But he's, you know, what he said during the interview
was enough to give us kind of a feeling of confirmation, because he did make those specific statements that there will be arrests. There'll be a list of people who are arrested and a list of why. There'll be a list of people who people expected to be arrested that aren't, and that information as to why will come out. And there'll be people who people think they know for sure are, you know, like on the bad guy's side that in fact aren't. And so we kind of like, okay, this is falling into the line of what we were.
Now, let me speak very specifically on this. The reality of what's going on and the message of what's going on has been undermined, and the message that you weren't supposed to hear, you haven't heard. The message hasn't gotten out. Anytime the truth got out, it was demolished and discredited and disinfoed to the hills. Certainly when I began talking at the end of January, I experienced that on a level that is completely unbelievable. Why would people take so much time, so much energy, and so much effort to discredit me, the, you know, disinfo guy, from putting out information if it wasn't true? So I think I need to express to people that the reason that people are discredited and that, you know, the wave of information is thrown at them to back them down and to keep them from putting out their story, and absolutely unbelievable efforts to use the judicial system to take them out. And
Bill said a good rule of thumb to weed out information that's mostly accurate to that is mostly disinfo is the number of naysayers that get on and try and heckle usually indicates that.
Well, and
I mean, of course, that's not, you can't just use that.
But let's say this.
We're expecting to be heckled.
People, there are people out there, both government agencies and private agencies, that do the exact same job. They hire people to get out there and to muddy the waters and to discredit information and to obscure the truth. And it is a massive industry. It is a huge effort.
So one last thing I'd like to add is, at this point, what is important is perhaps not about who you're going to vote for or whether or not Obama is the best next president.
We don't even need to get into that.
No, that's not what this is about.
What's going to happen with the elections and the presidency very soon are not going to be what anybody expects.
Well, and that's the thing is, what it's about, this is more about the fact that there is a level of fear around how all of these mass arrests are going to go down. And what brought me peace of mind is almost like this was the next puzzle piece for you to have gotten this information. It was almost like, well, that makes sense how when this change comes, if there's all of these companies that, you know, the water and the gas and the power, and you have Obama taking, you know, legislative steps to try and ensure that these resource companies are going to be maintained. This kind of, as bad as all of these steps have looked, if you think about it from the idea of the paradox in Timeline 1, Timeline 2, and Bill's first interview, you can kind of see how, wow, there actually might be some really beautiful news in this, and you can almost see how this is possible, right? If you just stay open to the information, then it's actually really quite exciting.
So let me kind of put down a hypothetical situation and demonstrate to people how this, the basic outline of these steps can go down. With the cooperation of the presidency and all of these measures that exist to take over the country.
Well, and Drake had said something about the chief, right?
Chief has to have the power. Well, now the presidency has the power to basically take over the country. The Keenan lawsuit. Liens have been placed against all 12 Federal Reserves and the G7 countries. The president has restored America to the International Criminal Court and international laws. Those steps can be utilized to then enforce those liens. Those liens would destroy the Federal Reserve because they do not have the hard capital currency to repay those judgments. The G7 countries would be destroyed because they do not have the hard capital currency, $5 trillion I think it is, to pay. So the financial industry would be wiped out and would have to be reformed. And a new system would then take it over legally and make it so that a new power structure was put in place in the financial system. And no longer could a small group of people on the planet print all the money that they wanted and use that money to buy things that they can't buy because they don't have to back up that money with anything. At that point, a new system would step in, a system that exists, that's ready to go, and would take control of finances, and then would be able to distribute that money not on a debt basis like has been done in the past, but on a resource basis. And when we use that new system, money would then go to free energy products, humanitarian projects, resource development projects, and reclamation projects. We would then be able to fix the problems that we know exist, that have been created. Nuclear power, it's a disaster. Fukushima, it proved that to us.
And if you look at Lauren Moray's video, she talks about the nuclear issues in the United States and the fact that the storage isn't actually an accurate means to control the side effects of nuclear production, and that we're actually becoming infected our soil and our water from our inaccurate means of storage, and that's something that we need to look at cleaning up.